Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
The government is now shut down. I've talked a lot in the past about why I like to record these episodes of the Childcare Bridge as close to production as possible. And this is the exact reason. From time to time during the course of the year, something happens. In this case, a government shutdown. And it's something that for a lot of our listeners could completely derail their business. So I want to talk this through, and I'm going to go over a couple of different strategies. How do you get through this? But also, how do you prepare so that if and when this happens again, you're not potentially scrambling? Literally in the last 6 hours, my team and I have received close to 800 emails across all the different centers that we're working with, centers on our email list, people just saying, hey, what the heck do we do? So one of the advantages, but in this case disadvantages at this point in time, is that a lot of childcare centers work with the federal government, whether that's getting the food program incentives, different grants, subsidized care. A lot of centers work with the government, and what you can potentially expect, whether this lasts for a day, a couple of weeks, it could even be months, which I hope it's not. But what can you actually expect? So the first thing is, don't panic, don't go in a complete frenzy, a complete free-for-all saying, like, we're done, we're going to have to go out of business. Don't panic just yet. To me, step one is that I need you to have extreme clarity as to what is your runway. Now, when I say what is your runway, what I mean is how long can the business survive, assuming you pay all your bills and debts, which we're going to circle back to in just a minute, without literally going to zero and negative zero. How long do you have? What is your runway? So if your first inclination is to say, well, we're month to month, then those are the centers that are going to be most impacted. And again, I'm going to talk through multiple scenarios, multiple step-by-step tactics and not even techniques, but things that you need to start executing today. So step one is, what is your runway? And when I look at runway, I look at what is not just the cash in the bank, but where can I tap some resources that I know I can relatively easily pay back. So you could go and look in your bank, and let's just, as always, we use simple math here. Let's say you've got $100,000 sitting in the bank. You can't tell me your runway is $100,000 if the mortgage payment or lease payment is coming out in the next couple of days. You've got obviously multiple payrolls you need to look at for the next, let's call it 30 days to start with the capital that you have, and assuming that you pay all of your bills, what's going to be left? Are you going to go down to zero and it gets replenished when money comes in? But we need to start doing some math to figure out how bad of a situation you're in. Some centers, the ones that are going to be most negatively impacted, they don't have any kind of runway. In other words, they've built up no reserves, no slush funds, no rainy day funds. They don't have any relationships with banks for lines of credit. And the lion's share, if not all their enrollments, are from subsidized care. Those centers, I will talk through today, but if you're in that spot, it is going to be a very rough ride. Step one is to look at your runway. So the way, again, you do that, you're going to look at the next 30 days, you're going to make sure that you have all of your debts plotted. I want you to plot them all, whether you're doing it in Excel, Google Sheets, on a form. I want you to have them all plotted down, and then I want you to look at your current cash before we're going to tap into other stuff. Now, when you start to look at the debts, here's what's very, very important. Are some of these things negotiable? Are some of these things, do you have the ability to make a minimum payment? So for example, let's say like I run a lot of stuff on my corporate credit cards all the time. I'm a big proponent of using other people's money. I'm a big proponent at getting credit card rewards, and then I use those to give staff different incentives. I use them for travel, etc. Now, with a credit card, some credit cards, not all of them, you can make a minimum payment. Now, you're going to get hit with some interest, but it doesn't mean that, let's say you've racked up a $30,000 credit card bill, that, great, well, the minimum you can pay is $3,000. So I need you to look at that debt list of where do we have some leeway. So credit card payments, we can take a look at that. Your lease is typically the most important aspect if you start to go into foreclosure. So that's not something that we can typically negotiate, but we're going to circle back there. Staff and payroll. You're not going to be able to furlough your staff right now if you keep every single thing the same. You have to make payroll. So great, I'm going to look at payroll. I'm going to look at my salary. So I'm going to go through all of these expenses. And I'm really going to look at what can be punted along a little bit so that I'm getting my bottom line number. Like, what is my best case scenario for the next 30 days? So I've got to make payroll. I can pay the minimum payments on these credit cards. And then you're going to have to start to make some calls. So if you have some big vendor payments that are coming up, you're going to want to call and you're going to want to ask for a little bit of flexibility. Now, the good thing is vendors are pretty understanding when they see a situation like this. They would much rather get paid at some point in the future rather than having to send you to collections. So you might say, I know that we owe you $5,000 for this month. I can make a payment of $500 and I'll keep doing that. And obviously if things improve quickly, I'll make sure that we get you paid. And then any vendor that is agreeing to do this, you want to get something in writing from them, whether it's an email. You don't want just their word, because I've seen a lot of horror stories where you've negotiated with the vendor and then they hit you with interest, late payments, and all these different things. So get whatever they're agreeing to in writing, but you're going to have to make some calls to vendors that you're aiming to have some flexibility. The mortgage or the lease payment, those can be a little bit trickier, but knowing that that is going to be your first or second largest expense, this is one of those that you, at the very least, need to have the conversations. Good news is banks can tend to be forgiving when it comes to situations like this. It's not like it's private knowledge that the government is shut down. It's all over the news. So they might be able to, and they typically will, pause your payments, and then they'll just add on a few additional payments at the end until the government reopens. So that could give you some flexibility. Your landlord, if it's a leased building, they may not be as flexible. If you are renting from me, for example, I'm going to need some of that revenue, and I don't own your child care center, for example, so how can I go to my mortgage provider and say, are you willing to do something? Now, I might have to if all of a sudden a bunch of my tenants don't pay, but you want to call the landlord and see, can you make smaller payments, for example? Can you pause a month or two? Can we make the upcoming payments a little larger to get you caught up? You want to look at what you can do on some of your biggest bills. In a situation like this, what I'm trying to do is just to keep the lights on. So I'm paying my gas, I'm paying my electric, I'm paying my water, I'm paying my staff. But other than that, I put a freeze on all other spending. I negotiate as much as I can with vendors. I'm not negotiating the bills away. I'm negotiating temporary pauses on payments, smaller payments, but I'm also giving them a reassurance that the second that things get opened back up and the checks start coming again, I will get you paid. This is the time where you've got to be vulnerable with your vendors. You've got to be truthful, transparent, and this is why I talk a lot about building really good vendor relationships. If you've beat up your vendors over the years, if let's say that you were working with my marketing agency, and we have a lot of amazing, we don't call them clients, we call them members, and we'll bend in certain situations, but if you've been one of those centers that is always paying your bills late, that's never grateful, even when we drive you tons of enrollments, I'm going to be a lot less likely, and I might just say, best of luck, and we'll turn your marketing off. I most likely wouldn't do that, but again, that's why you need to have really good vendor relationships. Having really good vendor relationships is key. So your step one, again, is getting all of your debts on one sheet, starting to make calls and figuring out what does that runway look like. If you have, again, no runway, if you were a center that put no capital aside, that only relies on the government, this is where the rubber is going to meet the road, and you have one of a few options. Number one is you start putting everything as much as humanly possible on credit cards. This is where I also talk about you want to have big lines on credit cards if there's situations like this. I've had to run payroll on my Amex card way back when things got really, really challenging. So you need to look at where can you tap into, whether, again, it's lines of credit. I might even consider going down the path of tapping into some of my home equity. Now, the reason that I'm willing to do something like that is that we know that we're going to get paid. The government's not going to then just default on all their payments and then you're going to be left on the streets. But you need to look at, if you have no runway, no capital, where can you leverage other people's money? Where can you get some bridge loans without having to go to payday lending loans that have ridiculous interest? I tap into credit cards, I tap into lines of credit, I tap into my home equity. If you own your building, for example, you can tap into lines of credit there. You want to go to your local banks and see what short-term loans you can get, your local credit unions. You need to hustle if you're in that spot. So all that we're focused on is what's the runway. With that particular step, then, we're looking at how can we negotiate, pause, punt along some of these bills so that we can give us some breathing room. Now, from here, there are a lot of different scenarios that can transpire. And I wish I had a magic ball. Every news outlet that I've read this morning says something different. Some people are saying, buckle up, it's going to be a long ride. Other people are saying it'll be solved within a day. I don't have a magic ball. I'm not a politician. I don't know if it's going to be 1 day or 1 year. Obviously, I hope it's not 1 year. But from here, you have to make sure that you are on top of your numbers, not even weekly, but at this point, daily. You're constantly managing everything. You're not buying anything new. I'm also typically not in a spot where I'm going to say you're going to ask your staff to be furloughed and laid off. And you typically, with the type of people that you bring to your center that work there, this is not a position where you normally can say, oh, I'm going to furlough you. That usually doesn't work. Unfortunately, a lot of your team members are living paycheck to paycheck. They cannot afford to not get paid. And if you have to lay off a bunch of your people, I can promise you it's going to be a bit of a bear to get them back. So the rubber's meeting the road as we speak. Don't panic. Get into action mode. Assess all of your lines of credit. Where can you tap into money? Analyze all of your different expenses to see where things are at. And then again, start to negotiate line by line by line by line. Don't get yourself into a spot where you ruin your credit because you just stop paying all of your bills. Do not do that. Because if and when you need more credit, and if your credit score is in the toilet, you will not be able to get any more. But I don't want you to go on a frenzy of like you're selling everything, get rid of the cars and get rid of that. Like, that's not what I'm looking for you to do. You have to stay calm and be strategic in the situation. Now, the other piece of this conversation, and I will continue this into next week, is that you have to not get yourself into this situation. And that doesn't mean that I don't want you to take any government funds. We've talked about the profit first methodology. We've talked about the king and queen eat first. I'm a Christian. I absolutely love going to church and hearing the word. And I always believe that the right message is going to hit me at the right time. And this past Sunday, the song that the worship team was singing was worthy of it all. You are worthy of it all. This is, you deserve all the glory in your particular spot. I know God deserves the glory. So I understand the message of that song, but you're doing such great work. You're inspiring, leading, mentoring the future generation. You deserve this. But we need to build your business so it's not on a house of cards, that one situation like this, and this is a big one, can derail it. So next week, I'm going to talk about a bit more with preparation. While I know that will not help right this second, you can start to do some other things in the future to make sure that you are prepared. So quick recap. First, do not panic in this situation. Don't try and time everything. You're going to have to just put your logical hat on and get into action mode. Step 2, I want you to look at and build out your runway. The way that you determine the runway, you're going to look at all your capital, your upcoming bills for the month, and then you're going to go bill by bill by bill and see what you can punt along, what you can get some traction on. Can you pause the mortgage? Can you pause the lease or pay less, so that you know where things are? That's going to tell you how aggressive then you're going to have to be with lines of credit, credit cards, tapping into your home equity, tapping into other personal loans. That runway hopefully will be enough time to get you past the situation. If you do all of that and you say, oh, Michael, my runway is 1 week, I candidly do not have an easy answer for you other than close your doors for right now. I don't have an easy answer. If you tell me that you've talked to every single vendor, nothing can be done, you've got no capital, you can't get any loans or lines of credit, I wish that I had better news for you, and I really hope you're not in that spot. We've got to get into action mode. We got to be strategic and get this train moving. I'm here to support you. Message me, message my team. We're going to put out some more training. We're here to help you as much as possible. Stick with me. Do not panic. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.